Hello, today is Thursday, May the 7th, 2020, and this is another edition of Did You See That? A daily program from my class who is reading the Bible through chronologically. And today our reading was from 2 Samuel chapter 7 and 1 Chronicles chapter 17. And these passages that we read today are highly significant, and they contain a lot of information, and we could spend a lot of time on many different subjects and discuss them. But the premise of this particular program is, again, is to pick out one particular point and to make that one point. And the point I'm going to make is actually a point of progressive revelation. Progressive revelation is that aspect of the revelation of God where, as we start from his beginning of his revelation all the way with creation, and we progress through history, through the narrative in the Old Testament, and then coming to the birth of Jesus Christ, we see his revelation becoming more and more clear, more and more specific as we approach and get close to the coming of the Messiah on this earth, his son, Jesus Christ. And because Jesus is the fulfillment of all the revelation of God that he's given to man. And so he is the clarity of the fulfillment of all that God has said before. And this progressive revelation for us, it is obvious because we have the full revelation, and Jesus has come. He has spoken on behalf of the Father. He has spoken only what the Father has given him to speak. He said that he spoke nothing of himself, but only what the Father gave him to speak. So we have gotten the full revelation of what God has to tell us, and that is to put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Now, prior to that point, revelation was given, and those by whom it was given, the prophets by whom it was given, for instance, it says in the epistles of Peter, were constantly searching out themselves to see who this was that they were speaking of. In other words, God was revealing things for them to say, and they had no idea who it was that God was intimating of whom they spoke. So they were searching diligently to see who it was that God was speaking of. And their faith was in the promises of God and that he would keep his promises. And that's significant in the passages that we read today, for these are promises that God made to David through the prophet Nathan. In this particular case, Nathan has revealed to him what God was going to do in the distant future. And even David acknowledges it that way. He says, "You have shown me what is to occur in the distant future." And what is amazing about this particular revelation that he has given to David through the prophet Nathan is that it has continued to get more and more specific of who Messiah was going to be. If you remember, our first prophecy regarding Messiah was all the way back in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And it was a prophecy that encompassed all of mankind, for it said, the seed of the woman. Remember, Eve was the mother of us all. She's the mother of all humanity. And so it said that the seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent, and the serpent would bruise his heel. So at the first giving of the prophecy of the Messiah that was to come, it was a prophecy that would have encompassed all humanity. It was no idea where Messiah was going to come from. In fact, the more devout people of that day would name their children in anticipation of that child perhaps being the Messiah. And then we come to Genesis chapter 22, and now we have Abraham. And he has been asked to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice. And again, it was a test of Abraham's faith. Again, God spared Isaac and provided the sacrifice for Abraham, but it was there in chapter 22 of Genesis that God was more specific. He said it would be one of his descendants, and from his descendants specifically, that would bless all the nation. So now we've gone from humanity down to a man, Abraham. And of course, Abraham had Isaac. but he also had many descendants from that, because Isaac had Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. And so the family tree continues to expand. So then we get to Genesis chapter 49, and this is where Jacob is blessing his sons before his death. And now we see the prophecy get even more specific. For when he is blessing Judah, he says, and remember, Judah was far from the firstborn, and yet he was the one given preeminence in the blessings. And Joseph's sons also were given preeminence, Ephraim and Manasseh. But he said to Jacob, the scepter will not depart from Judah. So now we see we've gone from mankind to Abraham. Now we're down to a specific tribe, and it was the tribe of Judah. Well, Judah was also a very expansive tribe. In fact, it's one of the more blessed tribes of all the 12 tribes. When you look at the censuses that were taken and the number of individuals that were in the tribe of Judah, it was more blessed than the other tribes. So then we come here to 2 Samuel chapter 17. And now David has it in his heart to build a house for the Lord, a permanent structure, not to be moved around from place to place, but be a tent, but to say, God has established me in my kingship. He's established me here in Jerusalem, and even called it the city of David, as it's called there, or Zion, as we've known it, as that part where the temple was built on. And so David wants to establish the house of God. His kingdom has been established. His place that his kingdom is residing from has been established. And now he wants to establish the house of God. And of course, God did not put that in his heart to do it, but it shows the heart of David towards God and his devotion to God and his love to God and his appreciation to God for the fact that he brought him from a shepherd position all the way to being king of a mighty nation who had conquered the nations that were in that land and they were cast out. So David purposed in his heart to build this house. Now we know that God did not permit that. He was gracious to David, certainly, and was kind to him, but he did not permit David to build this house, but he said that his son would build it. And but not only that, but he made some prophecies through Nathan about this son and his descendants. And one of his descendants would be the king that would inhabit the throne of David forever and ever. So we see this progressive revelation from humanity at Eve to the line of Abraham. Then we get it down to the line of Judah. And now we come down to the line of Solomon. And so this is getting extremely specific. And when we come to the New Testament and we look at the genealogy in Matthew, for instance, we see it taken back through the line of Solomon. And this was to establish the royal kingship of the Messiah. And the king had to come from the line of Solomon, because Solomon was the king. And that's where the kingly line came from. And Jesus descended from Solomon for his kingship. But I think what even cements an even greater for the line of David, that is the lineage of Mary given in chapter 3 of the Gospel of Luke. And in that lineage is taken down through the lineage of Mary. And there's a long discussion about her name not being mentioned there, but Joseph's name, and there's a reason for that, and that's for another discussion another day, but you can do your own research on that. But this is from the lineage of Mary now, taken down through Nathan, the son of David. Remember Nathan? We talked about him before, and that he was a son that David named after the prophet Nathan. And so through the line of Mary, it came down through Nathan. So in the line of David, the kingship was from Solomon, and then the lineage from David itself was from Nathan, from both of them actually. But it just goes to show you how God in his providence has so firmly established Jesus Christ as the only possible Messiah. He has fulfilled every prophecy, and this only being one of many prophecies that were made regarding him. And only Jesus Christ has fulfilled all of these. He is the Messiah. He is the Son of God. He is our way of salvation. There is no other. There will never be another. He is the only one. So anyway, that was what I wanted to make a point of today, was the point of progressive revelation as brought to a head here in 2 Samuel chapter 7 and 1 Chronicles chapter 17. And I thank you again for being with me on Did You See That? And I look forward to seeing you again.